My family threw a surprise party for my brother's new baby, but never told me or my daughter. When we stopped by to drop off a gift, my mom looked at me and said, "You don't belong here." My daughter smiled, took my hand, and said, "We know. That's why Dad's lawyer came with us." The entire room froze instantly. Can you imagine being told you don't belong at your own brother's baby shower? My mother literally spat those words at me, her smile vanishing the moment she saw us. But what she didn't know was that my 16-year-old daughter, Lindsay, had a bombshell ready to drop, one that involved a lawyer, a shocking betrayal, and a secret that would unravel our entire family. Looking back, my whole life felt like I was the understudy in my own family's play. I'm Heather, by the way, 34, and growing up in suburban Boston, I was Michael and Karen Davis's firstborn. For 3 years, I was their world. Then Nathan arrived, and from that moment, everything shifted. Suddenly, my 10th birthday meant practical school supplies, while 2 months later, Nathan, at 7, got a brand new bike, video games, and a weekend at Six Flags. This wasn't a one-off. It was the pattern of our lives. Nathan's just more sensitive. My mother would always explain, he needs the extra attention. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, without any of the privileges that title usually brings. I worked so hard for their approval. In high school, I kept a 3.9 GPA, joined the debate team, volunteered at the hospital. Yet, they managed to attend only 2 of my debate competitions in 4 years, always citing work conflicts. Funny, those conflicts never stopped them from cheering at every single one of Nathan's baseball games, even if it meant leaving work early. The day I got my acceptance letter to Boston University with a partial scholarship, I practically flew home. But I found them in the kitchen, practically throwing a parade for Nathan's C+ in algebra, a huge improvement from his D. When I announced my news, my mother just glanced up. "That's nice, honey. We'll talk about it later. We're celebrating Nathan right now." Later never came. Then, the summer after graduation, at 18, I found out I was pregnant. Marcus, my boyfriend for 2 years, disappeared within a week. My parents' disappointment was a physical weight. "We expected more from you, Heather," my father said, his voice heavy with judgment. "You've always been so responsible." It was the first time they'd acknowledged that quality in me, and it came as a criticism, a weapon. The strangest thing? While they practically froze me out, they reconnected with Marcus. He was visiting them, spinning his story, painting himself as overwhelmed but well-intentioned. They sympathized with him, more than with their pregnant daughter. "He's just young and scared," my mother defended. "You should give him time." I didn't have time. I had a baby coming. While other expectant mothers had baby showers and support, I had silence and cold disapproval. Lindsay was born in February. 7 pounds of pure beauty, with her father's dark curls and my green eyes. My parents came to the hospital, but their visit was brief, awkward. They held her like she was evidence of my failure, not their first grandchild. I deferred college, worked 2 jobs, and Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor, a retired teacher, showed more genuine interest in my daughter than her own grandparents did. The next year, I started nursing school, working part-time. Every day was exhausting, but Lindsay gave me purpose. I swore she would never know the sting of conditional love that had shaped my childhood. Nathan, meanwhile, dropped out of community college, lived at home until 25, hopping between jobs. Still, he remained the golden child. Lindsay was sharp, perceptive. She noticed the disparity early. "Why doesn't Grandma put my drawings on the refrigerator like she does with Uncle Nathan's birthday cards?" she asked once. I had no good answer, just a week. Some people just show love differently, knowing full well that wasn't it. Despite everything, I kept trying. Inviting them to Lindsay's school plays, sending photos, calling regularly. I wanted her to have grandparents, even imperfect ones. But the favoritism deepened, casting its painful shadow over my daughter too. By the time Lindsay turned 15, I was a nurse practitioner at Boston Medical Center, a single mother who had clawed her way to a stable home. Lindsay was remarkable, academic, confident, already researching pre-law programs. "I want to help people who don't have anyone on their side," she told me once. It felt both innocent and pointed. Nathan, on the other hand, finally found direction at 28 when he met Rebecca, from a wealthy family. Her father got him a job at his investment firm. A year later, they were engaged. My parents were ecstatic. Rebecca has been such a positive influence, my mother gushed. I bit back the obvious. Nathan had been given every opportunity for years, while I'd had to fight for every inch. The wedding was lavish, expensive. Lindsay and I were invited, our names misspelled. My parents spent the night introducing Rebecca's family to everyone, somehow never finding a moment to introduce their only daughter and granddaughter. A year later, Rebecca announced her pregnancy, and my parents' excitement went through the roof. My mother called me, trembling with emotion. Nathan's going to be a father. We're finally going to be grandparents. The word hit me like a physical slap. Mom, I said quietly, you've been a grandparent for 16 years. Oh, you know what I mean, she dismissed. This is different. And in her mind, it truly was. I tried to be supportive, I really did. I sent Rebecca a text, offered advice. Her response was polite but distant. Thanks. But I've got a great obstetrician and my mom's been through this 3 times. Over the next months, my parents became even more elusive. Calls went to voicemail. Visits were rushed. They're hiding something, Lindsay observed after a particularly quick exit. I shrugged it off, probably just busy. Grandpa's retired, Mom, she pointed out. And they were in casual clothes, not dressed for an appointment. Once I distinctly heard my mother say, it's just Heather. I'll get rid of her quickly. Another time, my father said, don't mention Saturday to her, before being shushed. Lindsay, protective as always, dropped a subtle bomb at a family dinner they couldn't avoid. My father mentioned a new restaurant they'd tried last weekend. Lindsay, with her innocent, piercing tone, said, that's strange. Mom called you last weekend to see if you wanted to join us for lunch. But you said you were both sick with colds. The silence was deafening. Nathan quickly changed the subject. The most revealing moment came a few days later. Lindsay froze scrolling through Instagram. Mom, she said, her voice tight, turning her phone to me. It was a photo from my cousin Amber, a family barbecue at my parents' house last Sunday, a day my mother had told me they were busy with church. My parents, Nathan, Rebecca, all my aunts, uncles, cousins, gathered around a barbecue. The caption read, Sunday fun with the fam. So excited for baby boy Davis coming soon. Did you know about this? Lindsay asked, hurt etched on her face. I shook my head, a lump in my throat. This wasn't casual. This was a planned family event, and everyone was invited, except us. This isn't right, Lindsay said, her face hardening. Someone needs to say something. The next day, she called my mother directly. Why weren't Mom and I invited to the family barbecue? She asked, without preamble. My mother fumbled, oh, Lindsay, it was just a last-minute thing, nothing formal. Last minute with 20 people? Lindsay challenged. There's a hashtag and everything. Cousin Amber's post has the details all planned out. My mother tried the mom was working excuse, but Lindsay shot back. Mom had Sunday off. You know that, because she invited you for lunch. Remember the lunch you said you couldn't attend because of church? My mother sighed. Lindsay, sometimes adults have complicated reasons for the things they do. I'm old enough to recognize a lie, Lindsay interrupted, a steel in her voice I'd never heard before. And I'm old enough to notice that you and Grandpa treat Mom differently than Uncle Nathan. Always have. She hung up. I was torn between pride and anxiety. When my mother called to complain about Lindsay's disrespect, I actually defended my daughter. She asked a fair question, Mom. Why weren't we invited? The conversation ended with her claiming I was making mountains out of molehills and had always been too sensitive. I tried to push the hurt aside, to focus on work and Lindsay's college applications. But the pattern continued. Family events we discovered through social media, celebrations we were never invited to. The wall between us and the rest of the family grew insurmountable. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Judith, my mother's sister. Looking forward to seeing you at Nathan's baby shower on Saturday. It's been too long. My stomach twisted. A baby shower? For Nathan? No invitation, no mention from my parents. I checked everything, frantic. Nothing. I texted back. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't know anything about a baby shower. Her reply, oh dear. I assumed you knew. Your mother has been planning it for weeks. It's at their house at 2 p.m. Maybe your invitation got lost. My heart sank. There was no lost invitation. This was deliberate. When I picked Lindsay up from debate practice, she saw it in my face. What's wrong, Mom? I hesitated, but we'd always been honest. Aunt Judith texted about Nathan's baby shower this Saturday. Neither of us were invited. Lindsay's face flushed with anger. Are you serious? They're throwing Uncle Nathan a baby shower and didn't invite us? That's beyond messed up. I offered a week. Maybe it's women only? Then why not you? You're his sister. And what about me? I'm his niece. Her voice rose. This is ridiculous, Mom. They can't keep treating us like this. That evening, I called my mother directly. Mom, is there a baby shower for Nathan and Rebecca this Saturday? A pause. Who told you about that? Not a denial. Not an apology. Just annoyance that I'd found out. Does it matter? Why wasn't I invited to my own brother's baby shower? It's just a small gathering, she said dismissively. Rebecca's mother organized it with me. Very intimate. Intimate enough for Aunt Judith to be invited from Rhode Island, but not intimate enough for your daughter and granddaughter who live 20 minutes away. Heather, please don't make this difficult. Rebecca wanted certain people there. And well, you two have never been close. And whose fault is that? I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. You've never given us the chance to be close. This isn't about you, my mother said firmly. This is Nathan and Rebecca's special time. Not everything revolves around your feelings. After hanging up, I just sat on my bed, tears flowing. Lindsay found me there, put her arm around my shoulders. We should go anyway, she said suddenly. I looked up. What? We should go to the shower. Show up with a nice gift. Make them face what they're doing. Lindsay, we can't crash a party we weren't invited to. It's not crashing when it's family, she insisted. What are they going to do? Turn us away at the door in front of everyone? That would just show exactly who they really are. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to take the high road, be the bigger person as I always tried to be. But another part, the part that had swallowed hurt after hurt for decades, wanted to stand up, just once. Let's think about it, I said. The next day, during my lunch break, I bought a beautiful, handmade wooden crib mobile. Expensive, but tasteful. Something that showed genuine care despite our exclusion. I wrote a heartfelt card, expressing my excitement about becoming an aunt. By Saturday morning, my decision was made. We would go. Briefly. Drop off the gift. Leave. No confrontation, no scene. Just a gentle reminder that we existed, and we cared, despite everything. As we got ready, Lindsay was unusually quiet, focused on her phone. She excused herself to make a call, speaking in hushed tones from her bedroom. When she emerged, there was a determined set to her jaw that reminded me so much of myself at her age. Everything okay? I asked. Everything's fine, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just confirming something. We drove in relative silence. As we turned onto their street, cars lined both sides. Aunt Judith's SUV from Rhode Island, Uncle Robert's pickup from New Hampshire, cousins from all over Massachusetts. Everyone had made the effort. Everyone was welcome. Except us. Lindsay squeezed my hand. Remember, Mom. Just drop off the gift. We don't need to stay where we're not wanted. As we approached the front door, I could hear the laughter, the conversation. The unmistakable soundtrack of a family celebration. Lindsay carried the beautifully wrapped package, and I tried to steady my breathing. I rang the doorbell, almost turned and ran. But Lindsay stood firm beside me, and I found strength in her presence. When the door opened, I saw the exact moment my mother's hostess smile evaporated. Heather, Lindsay, what are you doing here? She stepped onto the porch, partially closing the door, as if to shield the happy gathering from our unwelcome presence. Behind her, I caught glimpses of blue decorations, a banner reading, "It's a boy." We brought a gift for Nathan and Rebecca's baby, I said, my voice steady despite my thundering heart. Lindsay held up the package. My mother's eyes darted nervously to the gift, then back to my face. You shouldn't have come. You weren't invited. The words, spoken so plainly, cut deeper than I'd expected. After years of subtle exclusion, hearing it stated so boldly took my breath away. I'm aware we weren't invited, Mom. We just wanted to drop this off. We won't stay. You don't belong here, Heather, she continued, her voice lowered but firm. This is a special day for Nathan and Rebecca. Please don't make it about you. I felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. I'm not trying to make it about me. I'm trying to be a good sister and aunt, despite being deliberately excluded from a family event. By now, our conversation had drawn attention. Faces appeared in the window, curious relatives. The front door opened wider and my father stepped out, looking uncomfortable. "Karen, what's going on?" he asked, then froze when he saw us. "Heather, Lindsay, this is unexpected. We brought a gift for the baby," I repeated, my voice smaller now. Behind my father, Nathan appeared with Rebecca, her 7-month belly prominent in a blue maternity dress. Nathan's face registered surprise, then guilt, then a quick glance at our parents. "Heather, what are you doing here?" he asked, echoing our mother. Apparently making a huge mistake, I said, the hurt finally breaking through my composed facade. "We just wanted to give you this, but it seems we're not welcome even for that." Rebecca looked confused, her hand protectively over her belly. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't you be welcome?" Before anyone could answer, more family members had gathered in the doorway and on the porch, creating an audience for our humiliation. Aunt Judith stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Heather, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew about the shower when I texted you." Clearly, I wasn't supposed to know, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. The silence was deafening. No one spoke up to contradict me. No one, not my brother, not my father, not a single relative, said, "Of course, you should be here." Their silence confirmed what I'd always known but tried to deny. I was an outsider in my own family. I turned to leave, dignity in tatters, determined not to break down in front of them. "Come on, Lindsay, let's go." But Lindsay didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance. "Actually, I think we should stay." My mother frowned. "Lindsay, this isn't appropriate. You need to leave with your mother." Lindsay smiled, a calm, confident smile that seemed beyond her 16 years. "We know we don't belong here, Grandma. That's why Dad's lawyer came with us." "Lawyer? What lawyer?" My father's voice rose sharply. As if on cue, a man in his 40s, wearing a tailored suit, approached from the street where he'd apparently been waiting in a parked car. He carried a leather briefcase and wore an expression of professional detachment. "Good afternoon," he said, climbing the porch steps. "My name is James Winters, attorney at law. I represent Marcus Williams in matters concerning his daughter, Lindsay Williams Reynolds, and her mother, Heather Reynolds." My mother's face drained of color. "Marcus? What does he have to do with this?" I was equally confused. Marcus had been absent from our lives since before Lindsay was born. I turned to my daughter, questions forming on my lips, but she gave me a look that silently asked for trust. The lawyer continued. "I believe we should discuss this matter inside, unless you prefer to have this conversation in view of the entire neighborhood." My father hesitated, then grudgingly stepped aside. "Fine, but this is completely unnecessary and inappropriate." As we entered the house, the festive atmosphere had evaporated. Relatives whispered, some embarrassed, others openly curious. The gifts piled on a table, the cake with "Welcome, Baby Davis" written in blue frosting, the streamers and balloons, all served as evidence of the celebration we'd been deliberately excluded from. Nathan approached me, speaking low. "Heather, I didn't know you weren't invited. I assumed Mom had told you." I just looked at him. Years of hurt made it impossible to accept this weak excuse. "You never checked? You never asked why your only sister wasn't at your baby shower? You never thought that was strange?" He had no answer. We gathered in my parents' living room, the baby shower guests awkwardly hovering, unsure whether to stay or leave. Rebecca sat heavily on the couch, looking distressed, while Nathan stood protectively beside her. My parents remained standing, as did Lindsay and I, creating an unofficial division in the room. Mr. Winters placed his briefcase on the coffee table and addressed me directly. "Miss Reynolds, I understand this may come as a surprise to you. Your daughter contacted our office 2 weeks ago." I turned to Lindsay stunned. "You did what?" Lindsay took a deep breath. "Mom, I've been in contact with Dad for almost 2 years now." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Marcus, the man who had abandoned us before Lindsay was even born, had been speaking with my daughter behind my back. "He found me on Instagram," Lindsay continued. "At first, I ignored him, but eventually I agreed to meet him. He's changed, Mom. He wanted to make things right." "Make things right?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "After 16 years? Miss Reynolds, the lawyer interjected, if I may explain the legal situation that brings us here today. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. There is no legal situation here. This is a family gathering you're interrupting. I'm afraid there is indeed a legal matter, Mr. Winters replied calmly. He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. For the past 14 years, Mr. Williams has been sending child support payments for Lindsay. That's impossible, I said immediately. I've never received a dime from Marcus. Not directly to you, the lawyer clarified. Mr. Williams was young and irresponsible when Lindsay was born. He admits that freely. When he tried to make contact a few years later, he was told by your parents that you wanted nothing to do with him. My gaze snapped to my parents. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. They suggested that to avoid upsetting you, he could send the support payments to them, and they would ensure the money was used for Lindsay's care. Mr. Williams agreed to this arrangement, believing it was what you wanted. The room seemed to tilt around me. Is this true? I asked my parents. My father cleared his throat. We were trying to protect you from further hurt. Marcus was unreliable. We didn't want him coming in and out of your lives. So you took his money instead? The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. For 14 years, Mr. Winters continued, Mr. Williams has records of every payment made, checks, bank transfers, and correspondence with your parents confirming receipt. The total amount over 14 years comes to approximately $97,000. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Almost $100,000 that should have helped raise Lindsay. Money that could have paid for childcare while I was in nursing school. Money that could have meant fewer overnight shifts and more time with my daughter. Money that could have gone toward her college fund. Around the room, relatives' expressions shifted from confusion to shock to disgust as they realized what my parents had done. We were going to tell you eventually, my mother said weakly. We were saving it for Lindsay's college. In an account in your names, Mr. Winters pointed out, with no legal obligation to use it for Lindsay's education. Nathan stepped away from Rebecca, his face pale. Mom, Dad, is this true? You took money meant for Heather and Lindsay. We needed it more than they did, my father said defensively. Heather was doing fine on her own. She had her nursing job. We had retirements to think about, and your college tuition, Nathan. The words struck me like physical blows. My parents had used money meant for their struggling, single-parent granddaughter to fund their retirement and Nathan's education. You paid for Nathan's college with money that was meant for my child. My voice rose despite my efforts to contain it. Rebecca, who had been silent until now, stood up awkwardly, her hand supporting her back. I had no idea about any of this, she said, her voice shaking. Nathan, did you know? Nathan hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. You knew. I whispered, the final betrayal landing like a knife to my heart. Not everything, he stammered. I knew Marcus was sending some money, but I didn't know how much or for how long. I thought it was just a few thousand. Not this. Mr. Winters cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, Mr. Williams has authorized me to present you with two options. First, you can repay the full amount plus interest, which comes to approximately $115,000 within 30 days. Alternatively, we can pursue criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, in addition to a civil suit that would likely result in a judgment exceeding the original amount. Criminal charges? My mother's voice was barely audible. But we're family. Family doesn't steal from family, Lindsay said quietly. Especially not from a child. Aunt Judith stepped forward from where the relatives had been watching in stunned silence. Karen, Michael, how could you do this to your own daughter and granddaughter? Others joined in, their shocked comments creating a growing chorus of disapproval. The family that had so readily excluded us was now witnessing the ugly truth behind the perfect facade my parents had maintained for years. We needed the money, my father repeated, as if that justified everything. So did we. I finally shouted. Years of suppressed anger breaking through. Do you have any idea what we went through? The nights I stayed up crying because I couldn't afford both rent and childcare, the scholarships I lost because I couldn't maintain a full course load while working, the birthdays when Lindsay got one small gift while you showered Nathan with presents, all while you had thousands of dollars that rightfully belonged to her. Nathan approached me, his expression pained. Heather, can we talk privately? I hesitated, then nodded. We stepped into the kitchen, away from the chaos. I swear I didn't know the full extent of this, he said immediately. I knew Dad helped me with tuition money that came from Marcus, but he told me it was just a few thousand that Marcus owed the family for expenses when you were pregnant. And you never questioned that? Never thought to ask me? I should have, he admitted. I was selfish. It was easier not to ask questions when things were going my way. I studied my brother's face. The brother who had always been chosen over me, who had benefited from my exclusion his entire life. Yet, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. I'm sorry, Heather, for everything. For never standing up for you, for accepting their favoritism, for taking what should have been Lindsay's. Before I could respond, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. Heather, I had no idea you weren't invited to the shower. When your mother said she'd handle the guest list, I assumed that included you. I'm so sorry. Her apology seemed sincere, but it was a drop in the ocean of what had been revealed today. I think we should go, I said, suddenly exhausted by all of it. When we returned to the living room, Mr. Winters was explaining the repayment terms to my ashen-faced parents. Lindsay stood beside him, looking simultaneously younger and older than her 16 years, a child who had been wronged, a young woman taking action to right that wrong. We'll leave now, I announced. Mr. Winters has our contact information for arranging repayment. Heather, please, my mother began. We can explain. I think you've explained quite enough, I interrupted. Enjoy the rest of the shower. As we turned to leave, Lindsay placed the gift we brought on the table with the others. Congratulations on the baby, Uncle Nathan, she said softly. The drive home was quiet, the lawyer following in his car behind us. When we arrived at our apartment, Lindsay finally broke the silence. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Dad. I wanted to make sure he was serious about making things right before I got your hopes up. I reached across to squeeze her hand. You have nothing to apologize for. You did what I should have done years ago. Stood up for us. The baby shower dissolved into chaos after we left. Aunt Judith called me the next day, still reeling. Most guests departed quickly, uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed. My parents tried to salvage the celebration, but the damage was done. The festive atmosphere had been permanently tainted by the revelation of their deception. I had no idea they were capable of something like this, Aunt Judith said, taking money from their own granddaughter. It's unconscionable. In the days that followed, family members reached out, one by one. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Some called to express outrage on our behalf, others to distance themselves from my parents' actions, and a few to admit they'd noticed the disparity in how we were treated, but had never spoken up. We should have said something, Uncle Robert admitted during his call. We saw how they favored Nathan, but we told ourselves it wasn't our place to interfere. I'm sorry, Heather. My parents attempted damage control, calling relatives to give their version. They had only borrowed the money, always intended to give it to Lindsay. Few seemed convinced. 3 days after the shower, Nathan called and asked to meet for coffee. I agreed, though part of me wanted to refuse. We met at a small cafe. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Rebecca's been crying since Saturday, he said. She feels terrible about everything. She had no idea you weren't invited to the shower. Mom told her you were busy with work. And you? I asked. What did you think when you didn't see me there? He had the grace to look ashamed. I noticed, but I didn't question it. That's been the pattern my whole life, not questioning when things went my way. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been thinking about everything. All the times they chose me over you. All the opportunities one got that you didn't. The money. The money that should have gone to your niece. I finished for him. Yes. He looked me directly in the eyes. I want to make it right, Heather. I've talked to Rebecca and we agree. Whatever Mom and Dad can't pay back, we will. I hadn't expected this. That's not your responsibility, Nathan. Maybe not legally, but morally. I benefited from their favoritism my entire life. I got the college education that Lindsay's money helped pay for. I can't change the past, but I can try to fix this part of it. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Really talked. Perhaps for the first time as adults. Nathan admitted he'd always known, but had accepted it as normal because it benefited him. He confessed to feeling inadequate beside my achievements, which had made it easier to accept their preferential treatment as something he needed. I always thought you were the strong one, he said. You didn't seem to need their approval the way I did. I needed it just as much, I told him. I just stopped expecting it. When we parted, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness, exactly. The wound was too fresh for that. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. That evening, my parents showed up unannounced at our apartment. Lindsay answered the door, her voice tight with tension as she called for me. "We need to talk," my father said when I appeared, without lawyers or audiences. I hesitated, then let them in, though Lindsay refused to leave my side. "We've been thinking about everything," my mother began once we were seated. "We made a terrible mistake. We never meant for it to go on so long. 16 years is more than a mistake," I said quietly. "It's a choice. Multiple choices made every day for 16 years. We needed the money when it first started coming," my father explained. "The economy was bad, my hours were cut, and Nathan needed braces. We told ourselves we'd pay it back, but then there was his college tuition and our mortgage. And my struggles didn't matter?" I asked. "The times I had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying Lindsay new shoes? The night classes I took while 8 months pregnant because I couldn't afford to take a semester off. We thought you were managing," my mother said weakly. "Because I had to, my voice rose despite my efforts. Not because it was easy. Not because we didn't need that money. Because I had no choice but to manage." My parents looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. My father cleared his throat. "We've spoken to our financial advisor. We can liquidate some investments to repay about half the amount immediately. The rest we'd need time." "That's between you and Mr. Winters," I replied. "I'm not involved in the legal aspects." "And beyond the money?" my mother asked hesitantly. "Can we fix this? Can we be a family again?" Lindsay spoke before I could. "A family doesn't do what you did. A family doesn't steal from a child or exclude people from celebrations. A family doesn't consistently choose one member over another." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We love you both. We made terrible mistakes, but we love you." "Love without respect isn't love," I said, finally articulating what I'd felt for years. "Love without actions to back it up is just an empty word." They left with no resolution, no tearful reconciliation, no promises of a healed relationship. Just the beginning of a financial restitution that could never truly compensate for what had been taken from us. Not just money, but belonging, security, and trust. The following week, I finally met with Marcus. The first time I'd seen him since he walked out 16 years ago. Lindsay had arranged the meeting at the same cafe where I'd met Nathan. Marcus had aged well, his youthful cockiness replaced by a quieter confidence. He was married now, with 2 young sons, and worked as an architectural engineer. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said after an awkward greeting. "What I did was unforgivable." "Then why come back now?" I asked. "I've been in therapy for years," he explained. "Working through my issues, trying to become someone better than the boy who ran away from his responsibilities. When my first son was born, it hit me hard, what I'd missed with Lindsay, what I'd taken from both of you." He showed me documentation of every payment he'd made over the years, copies of checks, bank statements, even emails from my parents acknowledging receipt. The systematic deception was laid out in black and white, impossible to deny. "When I found Lindsay on social media, I just wanted to see her," he continued. "I didn't expect a relationship. Didn't think I deserved one. But she gave me a chance I hadn't earned." Lindsay, who had insisted on being present for this meeting, reached across the table and took his hand. "Everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry." I wasn't ready to offer such forgiveness, but seeing my daughter's capacity for grace moved me deeply. She had grown into someone stronger and wiser than I had been at her age, perhaps than I was even now. "I want to be part of her life," Marcus said to me, "and make up for what was taken from both of you. Not just the money, the time, the support, everything." "That's not for me to decide anymore," I said, looking at Lindsay. "She's old enough to choose what relationship she wants with you." As we left the cafe, I realized that while one family bond had been irrevocably broken, others were forming in its place. Fragile but genuine connections based on truth rather than obligation. 6 months passed. Winter turned to spring, and with it came not just seasonal renewal, but personal transformation as well. The first payment from my parents arrived through Mr. Winters exactly 30 days after the confrontation, a check for $57,000, representing the liquidation of some of their investments, as promised. The remaining balance would come in monthly installments over the next 2 years, with interest. Each check arrived promptly, though without any personal note or communication. I had chosen not to contact my parents, needing space to process everything. Nathan and Rebecca's son, James Michael Davis, was born in February, a healthy 7-pound baby with a shock of dark hair like his father's. I learned of the birth not from my parents, but from Nathan, who called from the hospital. "We'd like you and Lindsay to come meet him," he said, his voice soft with new parent exhaustion and joy. "If you want to." We went the next day, bringing the crib mobile we'd chosen months ago and a small stuffed elephant. Rebecca welcomed us warmly from her hospital bed, the strain of our last meeting replaced by the glow of new motherhood. "He's beautiful," I said honestly, looking down at my nephew's tiny face. "Would you like to hold him?" Rebecca asked. As I cradled James in my arms, I felt no resentment, no lingering bitterness toward this innocent new life. Whatever complicated history existed between the adults, this child deserved a loving aunt and cousin in his life. "Mom's been calling," Nathan mentioned as we prepared to leave. "She wants to see the baby." "That's natural," I replied, careful to keep my tone neutral. "I told her she could visit next week after we're settled at home," he continued. "But I also told her things will be different now. No more favoritism, no more secrets. If she wants a relationship with James, she has to respect our boundaries." It was the first time I'd heard my brother stand up to our parents. And though it shouldn't have taken their disgrace to prompt this change, I was proud of him for making it. Marcus had become a regular presence in Lindsay's life, meeting her for lunch every other weekend, attending her debate competitions, helping her research colleges. He'd offered to pay for her education in full, a gesture that meant more symbolically than financially, as the repayments from my parents would cover most of her tuition. "He's trying really hard," Lindsay told me after one of their outings. "Not just to be in my life, but to do it right. Not pushing too fast or overcompensating with gifts instead of time." I had met Marcus's wife, Diane, and their 2 boys. She had known about Lindsay from the beginning of their relationship and encouraged Marcus to reconnect. The boys were excited to have a big sister, and Lindsay seemed to enjoy her role as the mature, admired older sibling. My own relationship with Marcus remained cordial but distant. Too much had happened, too many years lost for us to forge a close friendship. But I respected his efforts with Lindsay and the genuine change he seemed to have undergone. In April, I received an unexpected email from my mother. I almost deleted it unread, but decided that would be acting from the same place of avoidance that had characterized their behavior for years. "Dear Heather," it began. "Your father and I would like to see you and Lindsay. We understand if you're not ready, but we miss you both and would like the opportunity to apologize in person. We've been seeing a family therapist and working to understand our actions and their impact. Please consider meeting us. With love, Mom." I showed the email to Lindsay, leaving the decision to her. "What do you think? Should we meet them?" She considered it thoughtfully. "They haven't really changed, you know? One apology and a few therapy sessions don't undo a lifetime of behavior." "You're right," I agreed. "But people can grow, even later in life." "Like Dad did," she acknowledged. "But he put in years of work before reaching out to me. He didn't expect immediate forgiveness." In the end, we declined the meeting, not out of spite or inability to forgive, but because true reconciliation required more than words. It required demonstrated change over time. I drafted a response explaining this, suggesting that perhaps in the future, after more healing on both sides, we might reconsider. "Real relationships are built on respect and honesty," I wrote. "Those foundations need to be established before we can move forward." As spring turned to summer, Lindsay received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities. She ultimately chose Boston University, my alma mater, with plans to study pre-law. The money that should have supported her throughout childhood would now fund her education. A fitting, if belated, use of what had been taken from her. "I want to become the kind of lawyer who helps people stand up for themselves," she told me as we celebrated her decision. "Like Mr. Winters did for us." I looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who had found the courage to confront injustice when I had accepted it for too long, and felt a pride so profound it brought tears to my eyes. "You're already helping people stand up for themselves," I told her. "You helped me." Life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Nathan and Rebecca moved to a house closer to our apartment, making it easier for us to be part of James's life. Marcus's sons occasionally joined Lindsay's weekend visits, creating a blended family dynamic I never could have imagined. My parents continued to make their monthly payments, but respected our wish for distance. Occasionally, Nathan would mention them, that they were still in therapy, that they asked about us, but he never pressured us to reconnect. The most surprising change came from within me. The anger and hurt that had been my constant companions for so long gradually began to loosen their grip. Not because what had been done was forgivable, but because holding on to that pain no longer served me or Lindsay. I realized that true healing wasn't about reconciliation with those who had wronged us. It was about reclaiming our own worth, establishing healthy boundaries, and creating a life filled with genuine connections. 1 year after the confrontation at the baby shower, Lindsay and I hosted a graduation party at our apartment. Nathan and Rebecca came with baby James. Marcus attended with Diane and the boys. Friends from work and Lindsay's debate team filled our small living space with laughter and conversation. Noticeably absent were my parents, but their absence no longer defined us. We had created our own family, not bound by obligation or blood alone, but by choice, respect, and love. As I watched Lindsay surrounded by people who truly celebrated her achievements, I realized we had both finally found what we had always deserved, a place where we unquestionably belonged. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't treat you right? What helped you heal from family betrayal? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself and creating the family you deserve. Remember, sometimes the strongest family bonds aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we build with love and respect. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you all the strength to create the healthy relationships you deserve.